When you stop contacting a man, something deeper than silence begins to unfold. It's not just about no longer texting him. It's not just the absence of calls or checking in or trying to fix it. It's the quiet realization that something has shifted. And maybe it's been shifting for a while now. But this time, instead of chasing clarity, you're choosing to create it. You stop because you're tired. Not bitter, not angry, just tired. Tired of feeling like the only one showing up. Tired of trying to read signals that feel more like riddles. Tired of convincing yourself that his mixed messages are proof of hidden feelings, when all they've really done is leave you emotionally starved. He says he cares, but disappears. He leans in, then pulls away. He compliments you, then forgets you exist. And you're left wondering, is it me? Did I do something wrong? Or is this just who he is? You start overanalyzing every moment, the way he said something, the time between his replies, the way his energy felt different this week than it did last. You start to shrink, you start to question your intuition. And you hold on, not because it's healthy, but because a part of you still believes maybe, just maybe, he'll turn around and meet you halfway. But then you don't reach out, you don't double text, you don't fill the silence with effort, and everything goes still. That stillness, that's where the truth starts to rise. Because when the noise of your effort fades, what's left behind isn't just space, it's revelation, it's accountability, and it's the clearest mirror he's ever been handed. If this already resonates with something you felt but couldn't explain, take a second to like this video. It helps it reach other women who need this clarity too. And now, let's talk about what happens next. When you stop reaching out, what really unfolds inside a man? What does your silence activate in him? And most importantly, what does his response tell you about everything he's been too afraid to say? When you stop trying, he feels it. Even if he doesn't admit it, even if he doesn't show it right away, trust me, he notices the difference. Because for the first time, there's no message waiting, no emoji, no hey, just checking in. For the first time, the weight of holding the connection doesn't land in your hands. And that silence? It doesn't sound like punishment, it sounds like change. The kind of change that echoes louder than any conversation ever could. For a man, especially one who's grown used to you being the emotional anchor, the one who always smooths things over, initiates the repair, reaches across the gap, your silence becomes unsettling. Not dramatic, not confrontational, just quiet. And that's where the discomfort begins. Men are taught to value control, certainty, predictability. So when the rhythm he's relied on, your rhythm, stops without warning, it pulls him into unfamiliar territory. He may not react immediately. At first, he might even tell himself it's nothing. He might scroll past your name in his contacts and think, she's probably just busy. But the days stretch, the quiet grows, and eventually something shifts in him, a question that won't stop whispering, where did she go? It's not just your absence that bothers him. It's what it means. Because when a woman who used to reach out stops, it forces him to look at everything he's been avoiding. That silence becomes a mirror. And in it, he doesn't just see you. He sees himself, his effort, his absence, his patterns, the messages he never answered, the emotional breadcrumbs he left behind, hoping you'd follow. The parts of him that felt powerful when you chased and now feel exposed in your distance. If he's emotionally unavailable, if he's disconnected from himself, the silence can feel threatening. Because suddenly the dynamic is no longer in his favor. He's no longer being pursued. And now, the responsibility to initiate is his. But here's the thing. Silence is not a game. It's not a tactic. It's a boundary. And a boundary is not about him. It's about you. It's about saying, I'm done begging for crumbs and calling it connection. Still, it stirs something in him, whether he shows it or not. There are men who will use your silence as a wake-up call, who feel your absence not as ego injury, but as emotional impact. These are the ones who take a moment, reflect, and say, I didn't show up the way I should have. Maybe he reaches out with honesty. Maybe he admits his avoidance. Maybe he doesn't know exactly what to say, but he says something real. But then there are men who disappear deeper, not because they don't notice, but because they don't want to feel. Because your silence doesn't just echo, it confronts. It reveals the depth of their own emotional detachment. And for some, that's too much to face. Avoidant men, Those with deep, unhealed emotional patterns often interpret intimacy as threat. Vulnerability makes them feel exposed, so they thrive in ambiguity, in distance, in halfway connections. Your presence gave them the illusion of closeness without demanding true effort. But the moment you stop trying, the illusion breaks. Suddenly, they're not just alone, they're accountable. For the first time, they're not responding to your emotional lead. And in that space, they're left with only themselves, their inconsistency, their avoidance, their inability to communicate clearly. And many will retreat even further, not because you were too much, but because they were never ready to match what you were willing to give. This is where women start to question themselves. Did I make the right choice? Maybe I should have just checked in. Maybe he's waiting for a sign from me. But let me tell you something. If your silence causes the entire relation to fall apart, it wasn't a relationship. It was your effort, holding it all together. You were building a bridge. He kept handing you thread. And I know that hurts, because you weren't asking for a grand gesture. You were asking to be met. Consistently, intentionally, emotionally. You were asking for clarity, not chaos. For presence, not potential. If you've ever been here, if you've ever sat in that silence wondering what it meant, drop a comment. Your story could help someone else feel less alone. Now, let's talk about the man who gets reactive. The one who doesn't reach out with softness, but with confusion or defensiveness. He doesn't ask how you're doing, he asks why you've changed. He doesn't say he misses you, he accuses you of pulling away. And suddenly, you're the problem. This is the man who enjoyed being pursued but never planned to pursue. He liked the idea of being wanted, but not the responsibility of reciprocating. When the energy shifts, when the attention fades, he doesn't take responsibility. He takes offense. But don't mistake his reaction for emotional depth. He's not upset because he loves you. He's upset because the validation he relied on is no longer available. Your silence doesn't trigger love in him, it triggers loss of control. And that's a very different thing. So he's confused, maybe even annoyed, not because he wants to repair things, but because now he has to decide. And indecision is where many emotionally unavailable men hide. When you were reaching out, it allowed him to coast. He didn't have to examine how much he was giving, because you were giving enough for both of you. He didn't have to choose you, because you were already there. But now that you're gone, now that you're no longer holding the thread, he's faced with a decision: show up or stay silent. And in that decision lies your answer. Some men will scroll through your old messages, they'll look at your photos, they'll even type out a response and delete it. But they won't press send, not because they don't care, but because caring requires vulnerability, and not all men have built that muscle. Vulnerability for them doesn't feel empowering, it feels unsafe. So rather than lean in, they retreat. They suppress. They tell themselves a story where they don't care as much as they actually do. They'll tell themselves you're just being dramatic, that you'll come back, that they didn't need the connection anyway. But the silence follows them. Not just because you stopped texting, but because you were the emotional glue, the heartbeat, the one who created space for connection. And now that heartbeat is gone, and they feel it. Even if they pretend otherwise, even if they never say a word. Because here's the thing about emotionally unavailable men. They don't often realize what they had until it's gone. And even when they do, their pride, their fear, their unhealed stories can still keep them from reaching back. Not because you weren't valuable, but because they weren't ready to value you the way you needed. And this is where your self-trust is tested the most. Because when the silence stretches, you might start to doubt what you felt. You might think, maybe I overreacted, maybe I should have waited longer. But the truth is, you waited long enough. You waited through the inconsistent replies, the lukewarm energy, the moments he pulled away without explanation. You waited through confusion, through anxiety, through the pain of never feeling fully chosen. You didn't walk away at the first sign of discomfort. You walked away after carrying the weight of the connection alone for far too long. Silence doesn't lie. It's not ambiguous, it doesn't gaslight or sugarcoat, it just is. And in that stillness, the truth comes forward. For some men, your silence will inspire growth. They'll finally confront what they've been avoiding, they'll reflect, they'll feel the loss, And if they're ready, they'll do something about it. Not just reach out with empty words, but show up. Different, clear, emotionally present. But for others, your silence will just confirm what they were afraid of all along. That they couldn't meet you there. That they weren't equipped to hold the kind of love you offered. That they were more attached to your attention than they ever were to your heart. And that's not your failure. That's their truth. Your silence doesn't just reveal him, it reveals you. Your growth, your boundaries, your willingness to finally say, I'm not available for almost love. You weren't asking for too much, you were asking the wrong person. And I know that's hard to hear, because it's easier to believe that if you'd just been more patient, more understanding, more forgiving, he would have changed. But what if your silence isn't what ended the connection? What if it's what exposed that it was never mutual to begin with? And now, here's the paradox. The more self-aware he is, the more silence confronts him. It rattles him. Not because he's lost control, but because he realizes what he lost was real. He may not have known how to hold it, but now that it's gone, he can't unfeel the void. Maybe he reaches out weeks later. Maybe he says, I've been thinking about you. And a part of you lights up, because maybe this is it. Maybe now he sees. Maybe now he's ready. But listen to what he says next. Is it followed by action? By clarity? By consistent effort? Or does it feel familiar, like he's knocking on the door of your life again, but still unwilling to come all the way in? Because not all returns are redemptions. Some are just reminders. Reminders of why you stepped back, of why silence was necessary, of why peace feels better than confusion dressed up as connection. You weren't cold. You were clear. You didn't go quiet to punish him. You went quiet to protect yourself. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do is stop trying. Because when a man is emotionally mature, your silence won't scare him. It will awaken him. He won't just reach out because he misses the attention. He'll reach out because he misses you. The real you. The you that loved deeply. The you that gave without conditions. The you that deserved more than he was willing to give until now. But if he doesn't, then your silence did its job. Because silence, when used with intention, doesn't create disconnection. It exposes it. It doesn't end the relationship. It just ends the illusion that you were ever the only one fighting for it. It's not rejection. It's revelation. When you stop trying to contact him, you don't lose anything real. You just lose the illusion that you were ever held in the same way you were holding him. And as painful as that is, there's freedom in it. Because now you know. Now you see what silence uncovered. Maybe he steps up. Maybe he owns it. Maybe he finally chooses to meet you where you've always been standing, with open hands and an honest heart. And if he does, you'll know it wasn't your effort that brought him back. It was his own. But if he doesn't, then his silence is your answer. And it's the kind of answer that closes chapters, not with bitterness, but with truth. You didn't lose him. You released someone who never fully showed up, and you returned to yourself in the process. Because you're not here to chase potential. You're here to protect your peace. To stop proving your worth to someone who only noticed your value in absence. To reclaim the energy you gave so freely and pour it back into the parts of you that got tired waiting. And the right man? He won't wait until you're gone to see you clearly. He'll recognize you in your presence. He'll show up, not just once, but always. Consistently, intentionally, fully. If this gave you the clarity you needed, if you finally feel seen, subscribe. There's more where this came from, and you deserve content that speaks to your experience. Because now you know, silence doesn't mean the story ends. Sometimes, it means you begin.